Breaking news.
Uh-oh.
John Wall was traded to the Houston Rockets. They traded selfish John Wall and a first-round pick for Russell Westbrook in exchange to the Washington Wizards. What do you think?
Well, Harden's not finishing the year in Houston.
I don't know if I'd say that. I mean, if anything, this is probably their ploy to make him stay, right? They obviously knew both of them were unhappy and they had to get rid of one of them. So I think they just
I can see that, and there was a bit of controversy between the two, but to me, this is a sign that they're blowing it up at this point. I don't think that you're a more competitive team with John Wall on your roster over Russell Westbrook.
I mean, it really depends which version of John Wall you get, right? Like if you get the
That's
healthy
the scary
version,
part. You don't know.
yeah, if you get a good healthy version, I mean, I think you probably get about the same, depending which type of system
Yeah.
you're running, maybe a better player. I think it really almost comes down to John Wall is probably still not the fit for Houston, and Russell Westbrook probably isn't the fit in Washington. So, like personally, I almost think it's a bad move for both of them. I think Wall was a better fit in Washington in the sense that he's much more creative with the ball, and even though they do have similar assist numbers, I think Wall is a better shot creator for other people like Bradley Beal. He's better at finding him in the open. Versus a situation where you have John Wall and James Harden, you would just have two guys who they're essentially just going to want to run the ISO and find a way to kick the ball out, right? So I don't know how those two mesh. And the same thing in Washington, where yes, Westbrook does sometimes have high assist numbers, but he's also a shot taker. So I mean, you added a shot taker to a team that already has a primary shot taker, and you added a ball handler to a team that already has a primary ball handler. So I don't get how either team wins.
I can see how Washington's going to win this trade. The reason why I say that is that Russell Westbrook is built for this team. Every single person on that team can take a three-pointer. Burton's takes, 8 per game? It's everyone's going to sit on the outside and just let Russell Westbrook do his job. That's what they tried to do in Houston, but they couldn't do it with James Harden. James Harden commands the ball. I know what Beal does as well, but Beal has played with a secondary playmaker for a long time. And his numbers went up last year because he was by himself. But to me, this is Washington saying, Bradley Beal, we want you to stay. We don't want you to go anywhere. We need you here to build this team. We'll bring in that star, even if this only star player they can get was Russell Westbrook. Who really wants to take on John Wall's contract? The guy's getting paid over $40 million. He hasn't played in 2 years almost. He's not the player he once was. We don't know because he hasn't actually played. This just shows to Beal to me that they're willing to put that team together to keep him there. I think this is a good trade for Washington. Again, this is one of those situations where that first-round pick isn't going to mean anything in the future because they're hopefully going to be a winning team. I think they're close to being the 8th seed last year. I think that this pick definitely moves them into likely the top 4 in the East, or at least a conversation in that position. So I think it's a great move for them. And I think Harden's gone, and this is the move signaling that Houston's done.
See, ironically, I'm on the other boat in the sense that I could see where you're coming from, where Washington could win from this, where, yeah, you know what, if it is executed properly, maybe it is a good trade for them. I just really don't think it is. I think Westbrook's in a point in his career where he is declining as much as we want to look at it. And the ways that he's declining is a lot of his quickness is where he was able to get in and then his assist would come off again, kicking the ball out. And I just don't feel like he necessarily has that ability as much as he does anymore. I feel like he is going to take a lot of bad shots in Washington because he's going to have the ball a lot. But I mean, yes, in an ideal world, if they can set it up where he's feeding Burton's, Thomas Bryant, Bradley Beal, and they're hitting the threes because they are very good, not just Beal, but like you said, Davis Burton's hits it over a 40% rate, I think 42 on over 8 attempts. Thomas Bryant, 40% on 2 or 3 attempts per game, let alone the other players that they have around there too. So, I mean,
you know what Washington doesn't do? They don't rebound. You know what Westbrook does? He rebounds. He'll take that ball from your fucking hands.
He definitely will. It's just again like I can almost see a situation where just because how almost toxic Westbrook's been to so many teams, not so many. I mean, he's only been on 2 teams, but almost just how bad the Houston situation was. I could see it happening again in Washington almost, and I can almost see them going the opposite where they decline. I could see them going where they were almost at 8 seed, but then we have up and coming teams like Atlanta, Chicago, Charlotte, who might actually leapfrog them because this team isn't actually as good with Russell Westbrook as some people think it's going to be. I could be completely wrong, and this could be a really good team like you're suggesting, I just personally think it's going to go the complete opposite way, where I think as long as John Wall plays, Houston's probably going to look like the winner of the trade, even though I still don't think it's a good fit. Yeah, we could say Wall hasn't played, but it's more so that he hasn't been healthy. He played 30 games last year. He played 40 the year before. So it's not like he had a completely torn, like, yes, he had dramatic injuries, but it's not like he had
Yes, he had some pretty
injury.
big injuries.
He did, but he didn't have one injury that kept him out for 2 years per se. He had a series of injuries, and as long as he could avoid having another one of those injuries, it's obviously in his benefit. I mean, at the end of the day, if we go back to 2015, 2016, even farther, there hasn't been a year that John Wall has played that he has finished in the less than the top 3 in assists. I mean, even the years where he's played the less games, last year he was second in assists with Kyle Lowry in his 30-some games. Year before, same thing. He was second in assists with 40 in 41 games.
Wall didn't play last year.
Okay, so it was then the year before. So, I mean,
Wall has played 73 games since the year of 2016.
So
it's pretty weak.
It is, but I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, look how high someone like you talk so highly about DeMarcus Cousins, where you say, "Oh, if he comes back, he's going to be the best center in the league."
No, I don't. I think that Wall, he's going to come back as to be an above-average player. I think he relied on his quickness a lot, and I still think he's going to be an above-average starter. But he gets paid to be someone who puts up stats like Russell Westbrook, and I just don't think he's on the same level.
I wouldn't really say someone who's paid to put up stats, because again, this is a guy who he comes in as a point guard. He progresses every year. His primary ability and his primary leading is A, obviously getting inside the paint and driving to the net. B, kicking the ball out and finding the guys he has to. And 3, he's very good on the defensive end. Yes, he does turn the ball over a lot, but I mean, he's a great defensive point guard as well. And the big thing, I guess, really is the fact that, as well as I'd like to say Wall and Beal matched, they didn't have too much playoff success, where yes, they did beat a really good Toronto Raptors team. Yes, they did take the Boston Celtics to Game 7 in 2016, 2017, I believe. So yes, they had potential to maybe go to a conference finals, but at the end,
they were good together.
They were. It's just they weren't great, right? They played against a lot of other good teams, and they were really only, like you said, they maxed out at 4 seed, 5 seed, which they might now again. So even at that, like, they need to find a way to even get over that hurdle, because with Wall and Beal, that's where they matched. It's kind of where they plateaued. So
I don't think they're getting better than that, to be completely honest. But I think at least it gets them in contention. Whereas if they were to lose someone like Beal and it was just to beat Wall there, I don't even know if that team's contending for anything.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say, because we didn't have a lot of time to see what Washington was with only John Wall. But I mean, if you have a guy who's only playing half the games anyways, then yes, it's very fair to say that that team would not be very good with only John Wall, versus they were still a borderline playoff team with only Bradley Beal. And you'd probably say the same in Houston, where if James Harden goes down and it's only up to Wall and Christian Wood to carry the load, probably not a playoff team.
Yeah, it's kind of the same situation. Houston, if they do keep Harden, they're still going to be a contender. Like you say, Wall and Harden are going to go well together because of Wall's passing ability. Wall literally has a very, very high chance on that Houston team to lead the league in assists again. If he does play every game, I think it's a very good chance he does lead the league in assists. But I just don't see them becoming a ultimate playoff contender around Wall and Harden. I hope they prove me wrong.
I just don't even think it'll be a good fit. I think it's, like I said, it may be a better trade in the sense that in the long run, if Wall becomes healthy, you have a 20-10 guy that people are going to want to trade for. But I still don't think it's a good fit for that reason, that you have 2 guys who, again, they just want a ball handle and pass, where, yes, James Harden could shoot. But I mean, you can't ultimately run 2 point guards. Like, they're not going to finish 1-2 and assist on the same team. That's not going to happen. And that's where they have been in the league, kind of primarily, where maybe, again, I could say that and Harden and Westbrook both still finished pretty high in assists this year, but I just don't think it would be sustainable in that regard. I think we'll probably see Wall get traded again sometime in the next couple of years. If he even comes back, he could just retire early. Who knows if he's even going to play again, really. So
Oh, no, he's hungry. He wants to play.
he does, but I mean, there might be things that prevent her, right? Like if he has a third injury, who even
Yeah.
knows if we're going to see John Wall again? So that's where I think Houston loses a bit more. I hope, like I said originally, I think they win because I think they get the better, hopefully long-term player as long as he's healthy. But like you said too, with the point of John Wall not making Houston a playoff team without Harden, Washington could still be a 9 seed if they only have Westbrook and the pieces around there. That's definitely possible because Westbrook obviously can lead a team very much like he did OKC, and that team around him looks very much again like that OKC team. They have a lot of good pieces: Bryant, Hachimura, Burton's. List kind of
A
goes.
lot of guys that can shoot.
Yeah, so I mean, even if Beal does go down, I think Westbrook might be able to carry that team a bit more than Wall
Yep.
for Houston. So I mean, I guess in that regard, there's another area where I guess maybe Washington, like you said, does win this trade more because they get someone who, if Beal plays 60 games, 65 games, it's not going to hurt them as much. If Bradley Beal gets COVID-19 and he misses 8 games, it's a bit more sustainable versus if James Harden gets it, you're relying on John Wall.
That team's down.
That team's probably going to go 2-6, 3-5 at the best.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's very interesting though. And if you think about it, like as much as they got traded and we don't really see a clear winner on either team, if you do think about it, both these guys had probably the worst contracts in the whole league, considering their issues outside of maybe Chris Paul. The fact that limited their market so much, whether it be Houston's market, whenever Westbrook and Harden both say, I want to trade, I don't want to play with that guy. You got to, unless you're willing to trade Harden, who is an MVP player, literally has put up higher stats than Michael Jordan in the last 5 years, weak in other areas. But with that being said, there is no winning when you trade away an MVP caliber player. So they had to do something to break that pair up. If they wanted to keep Harden, they had to do something. The fact that they were able to bring in another borderline another all-star player, I consider it can be considered a win in that way. But the team doesn't get any better, but they're able to maintain this MVP caliber player who on his own can have a top 4, top 5 seed in the West. So I think just being that said, if they're able to keep Harden, it is a win. If they do trade Harden away, they can get a lot for him, but they're not going to get back to this level for a long time.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess a couple of things just before we end is like you said, I mean, as much as it is like I originally said, a ploy to keep Harden, like you said at first too, it is a very good move on Washington for keeping Beal around because there was a lot of talk of what they're going to do, and clearly this is them saying we're going to build this team around Bradley Beal. Goodbye, John Wall, which obviously I would agree is the right move. So again, I guess that's another win in Washington where just kind of the more you speak about it, the more it seems like a better trade for the Wizards. Last on that too, like you said, Chris Paul. I mean, great example of how we might see John Wall and James Harden mesh, right? Because again, Chris Paul very playmaker oriented, John Wall yes a bit more athletic, but at the end of the day, what their goal is on offense is very similar, I would say. So I would say the offense is again taking that Chris Paul year or two into consideration would be probably the best that we're going to see that Houston Rockets offense, and it still didn't win. So.
But they came close. They came real damn close.
They did, and
on the right shot, the right ball, and bouncing the right way. We're saying this, but Philly could also be a title champion right now as well. So
injury happens.
Have to bounce the right way.
Definitely, but definitely interesting trade. I mean, we talked about Westbrook getting traded a lot. We didn't necessarily talk about Wall getting traded a lot this offseason because I mean he's irrelevant to the point where look, I thought just based on I thought he had at least played some games last year. He played none. It's just that he's so out of this league at this point where you almost just know his name, but you can't remember the last thing he did. And I guess, again, that's just where John Wall is now. Interesting trade for both teams. We'll see how it goes.
Wish him the best.
Definitely.